We actually have work. We have jobs. So
We're live, folks. Yeah.
welcome back. So,
We took a week
Andy,
off.
yeah, you've been tripping from East to West Coast. Kevin, I met you in San Francisco while I was doing stuff. What's going on?
Yeah,
What's on your mind other than $3,499 goggles?
that definitely is not on my mind at all, to be honest with you. I don't give a shit. It has no impact on me at all. I'll buy one, not my space. How about you guys?
I mean, Andy, you and I were flipping out about it yesterday a little bit. You more than me, no?
I think they're awesome, personally. I don't think we're going to see a 2024 adoption cycle. I think what will end up happening is it'll be an early adopter pricing model of $3,500, and in 2026, you'll start seeing an $1,800 pair or $1,500 pair and then you start seeing real adoption. But I think it's pretty cool. And I don't own an Oculus. I don't have any interest in the metaverse. I just think once Apple enters into a market, they actually do a very good job of delivering a high quality product experience. And I think people are looking at it wrong. I think this is the best audio and video display you've ever had.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to watch movies on the plane to San Francisco with them.
Yeah, I love the plane in it. The plane thing really got me. That makes a ton of sense.
I have no idea how that works with a 2-hour battery life. I guess you got to plug in so now you got to plug in your laptop and your headset into the airplane power supply with that one little outlet.
Yeah, going from San Francisco to Vancouver will be a nice flight.
Right. Are you going there? You go back to Canada? I thought you did.
I have family there, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You never talk about this. You act like you're an SF native. SF is so back. I heard it a lot while I was over there, not just from you. I will say that being in full offices in SF, you kind of feel that you do feel the energy. And there's a part of me that just said, we're doing an offsite here in town, like a local offsite. And the idea of seeing people, being able to jam with them, things like that. I don't want to be in a full-time office CEO ever again for the rest of my life, but I missed a little bit of that energy. I feel it when I'm in there, you know?
So I don't have children yet, but I hear there is the dichotomy versus people who have children and they're at home versus people who don't have children. And I'm kind of curious to replay this in 4 years and hear Julian's perspective.
We have tons of first-time dads in my company. I want to say 5 or 6, maybe 8, maybe more, a ton. Huge number of first-time dads. And they all work from home, and sometimes you see stuff happening in the background or whatever. And I have an office here that's sort of separate, so I could get away if I wanted to. But yeah, I can see that dichotomy, people wanting to have a separate life, being able to go and do things. It also lets you connect with founders in a different way. I know we wanted to talk about founder networks and some other stuff like that, but before, I know, Kevin, you don't care at all about this goggles thing, and I don't blame you, but I wanted to talk about platform shifts in the way that
I care about platforms. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I want to ask what a CEO's job is, a founder CEO's job is when they see something like this. Like if there was a course, what would the course teach people to do? And if you had a mentor who was a successful entrepreneur, what would they be telling you to do when they got your call today talking about this?
I'll take this, even though it's not relevant to my current company. But I think that, for one, platform shifts can be massive. I think that if you have an existing product, you have an existing team, hopefully you actually were brought into like Apple, for example, to be some of their first apps. That would be like the best way to be brought in. And you were one of the first apps to be launched on there. If not, a quick follow. Like I know that we were talking about like Evernote, how they were one of the first apps on the iPhone, and they probably first to market for them was probably really important in a sea of like note-taking apps, which also they competed directly against Apple with, which I still use to this date versus Evernote. So I think catching that wave, if it's right for your company, can make a really big difference. I think ultimately it doesn't. And I think that in my perspective, it's going to be the best product and best distribution and everything's going to win out. But I kind of look at it as like a product launch and a way to get ahead of your competitors. And it potentially could work for like, I don't know, what are some examples of like first to market on a platform that won? Here's actually one of the best, like Windows 95 would be one of the best. I don't know if you consider like the PC market a platform, but like them to be first to market and they just like gobble up everything would be the strongest. But now with the markets are completely different. There's so much competition everywhere. There's so many new platforms, everything. I think that things are definitely different than they were before. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think there's some great examples. I think Zynga on Facebook is the one that always comes to mind. I think Uber on mobile is a very big platform shift that enabled the rise of Uber and Lyft and Postmates in the on-demand, all the delivery food apps. So that's DoorDash. And there's a few others. Those were second derivatives. So those came a little bit later. But I think the desktop to mobile shift was very real. And
we're talking about like give me like some time ranges here, because like DoorDash launched when the iPhone came out in 2008. DoorDash launched in 2012, so like not exactly
later. I believe it's
but Uber is 2009. It's March. Uber was founded March of 2009, and the iPhone comes out late 2008. I think the one that everyone thought was going to happen, and somebody who'd be great to be on here with, was Path with Dave Morin, and he was going to reinvent the social network on mobile, and it ended up working out, but it was an interesting play, the mobile platform shift. Gaming was a very interesting one in itself. I remember we did a deal when I was at Norwest called NG Mocha. That was one of the first mobile gaming companies. But I think there have been a few platform shifts that we've really seen since we've been in tech. So they are mobile.
Okay.
They're social, so building on top of Facebook. Then there's been, I guess, crypto is a platform in itself.
Yes. Is it still?
It's
okay.
I'm not taking an opinion here. I'm just kind of rolling them out.
All right.
And then we had, after crypto, I guess we're back to spatial computing. I think this is what this is called. I refuse to call this the Metaverse because I actually think it's something very different. And so in each one of those, there are category winners that we've seen.
There's also been a number of failed platforms, right? Like it's from our time. You might remember the Internet of Things and how that was going to become, and there was a whole series of companies funded around Internet of Things kind of changes and transformation idea that compute would fit inside of everyday objects, but it didn't really play out. So it's for someone listening who is a first-time CEO, unlike ourselves, of course.
Do we know everything?
Especially me. How does someone decide whether to spend resources, especially when resources are limited?
I'm going to take the counterpoint. I honestly think that you should be listening to your customers. And like, I look at these things as like a hype cycle, and I'm going to be a broken fucking record. If you're building the hype cycle, like, it's like you're playing the lottery. There's so many other companies that are trying to do whatever you're trying to do. So AI is the current hype cycle that has a lot of venture funding underneath it. Who knows what's going to happen with like the Apple VR headset, if that's going to get a lot of funding under it, or VCs may wait until it comes down to price to see how many people actually buy those things. But like, my advice, always don't build in the hype cycle. I'm definitely jaded because I built in the hype cycle and my company failed. So keep that in mind. But there can be some successes. Yeah, that would be my points on that.
Well, I think we have to divorce the concept of the hype cycle and actually predicting the future and predicting a platform success. So think about it like this. If you built on Google Glass, basically no matter what application you built, probably failed or pivoted because Google Glass as a platform itself failed. Right. That being said, iOS and Android have been incredibly successful platforms. They are the internet to a large degree, and they are I don't know the data, but my guess would be half of computing. Mm-hmm. Now, the question that comes to mind here is the Apple Glass going to be a real fundamental platform shift, or is it going to be like Google Glass? And I don't have the answer to that, but I actually do fundamentally believe once Apple makes a play in a market, they typically win. And when they rolled out Apple Watch, everyone thought it was going to be a failed product, and it took time, but it has significant market share in the watch market. When they rolled out other products historically, the iPad, I think everyone famously made fun of John Doerr because he said he was going to carry it around everywhere, and he carried it around to parties. And everyone thought at the beginning, what am I going to use an iPad with a bigger screen? But today everyone uses an iPad, and I bet half the people on a cross-country flight have it. Mm-hmm. And so
that resonates with me.
Apple enters
not with me. He uses a PC on his private chat, so that's not. I'm not a PC, I'm Mac. So
there is
there's
something to be said about when Apple has gone into something. It is very likely it's a $34.99 headset. It's coming out next year. The reason we're talking about it is I think I agree with Andy to a degree that once Apple had decided that they do something, that it is super meaningful. And it's actually in their iteration that they become great, not in the first version. The first version tends to be a set of early adopters, after which people are like, oh, this is not for me. This is trash. It has no CD-ROM drive, or it has no ports, or or it's not very powerful. And it's only in the iteration that they become successful. That said, some Apple Watch companies were created, right?
I'm going to take the other side. Like, there's no company in history that has been able to continue to produce hits. They're like in anything, right? So like taking the approach that because Apple's doing it, it's going to be a thing. Just for that reason is just like, to me, that just seems stupid. Like, I want to see the evolution of this. I want to try it. I was able to get Google Glass when they first came out, and like it was I had one, and it was fucking trash.
Was it from John Doerr?
Was that?
Was it from John Doerr?
No, it wasn't. I like won a lottery or something. I can't remember how they distributed those things, but like it was just so stupid. It was like, and not even the way that you look, because like I was like, I think this is like a decade ago or whenever they launched it, and it was just like, it had no usability to it, and it just didn't make any sense. And so I want to try the Apple piece, just like so to say that Apple always is going to hit product market fit is just not right. Or any company is always going to hit them. Like, you look back on like the existing massive players like IBM and like all of those companies, they couldn't do no wrong for so long. And then they get disrupted by the incumbents, which happen to be Apple. And Apple's going to get disrupted as well. It's just like, this is the innovator's dilemma. And so to think that just because Apple is producing something that you should go and run and build like an app, like if I'm which I am a CEO of a company, but if it was relevant to my product, I probably would not build on it unless it was it fit exactly into like what I was building.
Let's be a little bit more scientific.
Wait, one moment. Wait, Kevin has trauma, and the fact that he's talking about his own company is actually giving him difficulty in seeing it clearly. Kevin, why don't you advise? Hold on. Why don't you advise Andy on what he should do about it in his company, and then advise me on what I should do about it?
You really want me to do this publicly?
I mean, yeah, just be like, should we do something or not? And I just think that you do a back-end infrastructure thing. Of course, it's irrelevant to you.
Yeah. Okay. So Andy, you do video conferencing. I think that at this point, I think the price points, I don't think the adoption is going to be there. And I think that given your limited resources, which we all have as startups, this is not going to be the make or break piece for your business. Like, you are focused on getting more companies to sign up on Teams, I will say, irregardless, even if this thing did have massive product market fit, I still think that computing, like cameras and laptops, are going to be the primary use for your product. You may get, if you went to build for them, 5% maybe, probably less than that would actually even use this. So like, is this a good use of your time versus like improving your AI capabilities and like all the other features you're doing? I would say it would be a waste of your time. Julian, like, I don't know as much about your business because I'm not a customer. I actually am a customer of Andy, so I know his product very well, but I don't know from your perspective how that would add. So Julian, you're basically 5 for solo entrepreneurs, right? Essentially, right? So I don't quite know how that would fit into you. So I don't actually understand at all why you would even build for it. And for me, it makes no sense. I help people fulfill their stuff around the country. Nobody's going to be putting on anything to watch their shit to be shipped in a different format.
Andy, go ahead.
I'm just going to take the data-driven answer on this one. So estimates for production for year one of the Apple headset are like 150,000 on the low end to, it looks like the mean when you Google it, 200, maybe as high as 350. The 350,000 units max year one, 2020. Maybe they'll do better, or maybe they'll do worse, but there's a lot of supply chain challenges. How many iPhones do you think were sold in year one, 2007?
That's a great question. I don't know. Yeah.
I'll let you take a guess.
I hate these comparisons because they're all full of shit.
It's a great comparison.
Is this cause or causality? It doesn't make any sense. It's just like saying like crypto.
Kevin, it's not cause or causality. It's supply chain. It's how many can they produce?
How many? Okay, wait, hold on. I think the answer is 5 million iPhones.
Kevin, what's your guess?
10 million. I don't know.
So 6.7 million. We're not talking about how many are they going to, how many are they, is the demand. We're saying how many can Apple produce?
Yeah.
So let's assume Apple
can chosen to produce also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's an M2 chip in there. I believe there's their new R1 chip, which is their sensor-based chip in there. So there's a lot of technology risk and a lot of custom hardware here. And so if you can produce 200, 300,000 units in year one, is it a platform in year one? Probably not. Is it a platform year two or year three? Yeah.
I'm always impressed by your sophistication. I think it comes from your years as a VC and as a banker. Is that right?
Thank you. I can, or just some basic Googling why the two of you are arguing.
Okay, let's move on from this, but let's kind of cap it off. I think that like platforms, whether that be like hardware platforms or software platforms, right? Like think of like Slack as a new platform that you can develop on, or any other like large tech company. I think that you as a business need to like decide how big of for one, how much resources is it going to take away from all the other things you're going to get? And like how, like if this does work, how big of a potential output is it going to get? I think the reason that I am like skeptical about both chasing partnerships and also new platforms, and I like to control like my own destiny as far as like building a product people actually want. And like for me, like our go to market is going to be primarily like outbound, like controlling like everything, is just because we just focus on that and just get better and better and better and better at that.
And then things.
Yeah. And then we'll have a partnerships team. Like we partner with other people. They're a very small percentage of like our incoming customers. And so I think that you just need to like weigh all of those different things against each other. And like this brand new hardware shift, which like I would argue like Oculus has been out for so long, and I know Oculus is different than Apple, and Apple's probably a better company to develop this and all of this. It kind of just shows like the potential market. And so you need to weigh that into consideration. But I think that for some companies, like getting on like mobile is a great example. Like there was entire, like you're completely right. Uber would not exist without mobile. Like so many companies would not exist at all without mobile. And so I think that it's not a one size fits all. And so you should just like really weigh the costs and benefits against what you're currently planning. I think where people go wrong is that they're just chasing the next thing, whether that's going to be a partnership that's going to save their company. Here's a great example for me, the Shopify App Store. So we work a lot with Shopify. We've actually chosen not to be in their app store because I do not want to be amongst all of the other competitors that are in there because there's not much discoverability on there. People are going to do their independent research because for us, we're a very big ticket item. Like people spend millions of dollars on us a year. And so it doesn't make any sense like that we would be in that app store as a distribution channel. So we've chosen not to actually do that. So I think that it's really dependent on your company and what you're doing and all those things. But if you're probably a mobile gaming company, this is probably gonna go on to the top of the list as far as like maybe something you should be interested in or something like that. So we've talked about this now for 23 minutes. I don't know. I'm ready to move on because also our listeners are like mostly first time founders that like should not be chasing this shit because like they should be focusing on solving a problem for their customers right now. And it most likely is not in VR.
It's very likely. Yes.
So for all those first time founders out there, stayed for the record, I am going to buy an Apple Vision Pro and I bet Julian will too.
I probably will. That said, I probably will discard it, but I'm also a tool because I literally I bought every Apple Watch from version 1, literally all of them. I bought 9 because one I lost in the ocean. And that's really, I mean, there are millions of them. It was the best selling watch in the first or second year, literally of all priced watches of any materiality. And I bet it's the best selling VR headset in year 1 or year 2. But that doesn't mean it's going to change your life or your business necessarily.
All right. Topic number 2. I'm going to choose one unless you guys choose one.
Do it.
Okay. I want to go through this tweet that Julian may have influenced somewhat. So Zach Sims, who is the founder of Codec Academy, do you want to give some background on Zach?
I've known Zach for a long time. When I said this, when we were talking about it, Andy said, "You're the best networks founder." And to tell you the truth, Andy, that frightened me because I don't feel that I'm very networked at all, but I do know Zach Sims very well. We met at a Slow Ventures dinner 6-7 years ago, and we've like taken a vacation together and so on. So he put out a tweet because a series of tweets because he left Code Academy after 12 years, I believe.
Yeah. So I won't read, like he's got a big, his Twitter name is Z Sims. Go and look it up. The reason I wanted to bring it up is because like the current environment that we're under, and he kind of takes people through the journey of Code Academy. And I'm not going to read through all this stuff, but the TLDR on this is that they were not able to raise a lot of venture capital versus their peers for whatever reason. And I'd actually be curious if Julian, you knew why, but what they did is that they were forced to become profitable. And like, if you're in like the venture world, profitability it's not a super celebrated thing. It definitely is today for sure. But like pre 2022, it definitely was not a celebrated thing. And he was talking about how they couldn't raise money and they were forced to get profitable. And then they had a venture-like outcome. So they sold in 2021 to Skillsoft for $525 million. And I just wanted to like, especially in this environment, kind of kick off that like conversation of like, you do the hard things that normally well, in the normal venture 0% environment, you potentially would not do. Like, you would not look to get profitable. You would always be looking for that next round. I know I did that at Shyp. I know, Julian, you did that at Breather. It was always about getting more money from venture or else you would die.
Sadly.
And Zach, I don't know when he founded the company, but like, he took the opposite path because it was just so hard for him to raise money, and he was forced in profitability, and he ended up with like an amazing outcome. So I just wanted to like open up for a discussion on like, there's different routes than just like VC or die.
And Codecademy was a sexy company forever. And I remember when I met Zach, I felt like, oh my God, this is like a cool company. And it's interesting how much of the veneer of a company, because it had been Codecademy, for example, had been mentioned by Obama in 2012. They had like tons of users on like even the first day. And I felt like I was struggling uphill and trying to run uphill at a really tough battle. In actuality, every founder has struggles. So I can speak to the public side, but Andy, like, what is your perspective when you read this?
Just thinking about this all as we were starting talking about this, and like, when did growth at all costs actually become the norm? And interesting just to think about. I mean, basically the reason why this all manifested itself is SaaS businesses took a lot of capital historically to get them to profitability. But if you go back in time, I mean, I think few people realize this, that Microsoft was profitable at their IPO.
Yep.
And a lot of the businesses that we were thinking about, the Ubers of the world, the tech-enabled services businesses, where they were going for a growth at all costs model, were literally just subsidizing the end user forever. And I wonder if our view of what a SaaS business used to be pre-AWS really changed the way we thought about building venture-backed businesses. And this is just something I thought of on the fly. I never really thought about it before, but it is very interesting because, I mean, if you talk to most entrepreneurs before this year, their only goal was to raise more money. Maybe the secondary goal was to take money off the table. But the reality is you're building a business. And the only way your business is sustainable at scale is generating free cash flow and profits.
Yeah, it's fascinating and I mean, we were in the thick of it. I was in New York in the middle of WeWork and Uber happening, and there's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And when you had this, what some people in the industry would call dumb money, right? Meaning, of course, when you're talking about your own money, it's always smart. When you're talking about somebody else's money, it's always dumb. And here what we mean is unsophisticated, non-software money going into software businesses, try to drive. I have a respect for margin that I didn't have. And Codecademy is a zero marginal cost business. So they had high margins, I imagine, from the get-go. And the way that I think about this is keeping the business really tight and keeping it focused on one thing, making it super, super popular, and then it's like turning on a paywall. It's something that I've never had, I think, the balls to do, is just to stay at zero revenue for so long.
Yeah.
But this is the way that it was done at Codecademy. There was only, I don't know exactly what year it was, but it's like when a Codecademy Pro account came out, but it was years after the business started. So they stayed at zero revenue for a long time.
And then they were forced, you know more of the story because
I don't recall whether I have personal information about this, but like then the moment they turned on the Pro thing, they were like, oh, we're on the edge of profitable. So that's amazing, right? Having to turn it on, but when they turn it on, being like, yeah, we have zero cost now. It's something you get.
I don't know anything about this business, and I assume most of our listeners don't. So it was free coding classes. Is that what it was? And then all of a sudden there was a Pro model, and you paid for the Pro model. So it's sort of like a Discord style business where they sell Pro versions.
That's a good lens on it, I think. And the idea that it would be like Discord is a team product that probably has pretty decent stickiness because you're in several channels at once. Codecademy there were lots of these businesses in New York at the time. There was like General Assembly coding classes. It's like a whole wave of coding.
So many of them.
Flatiron School.
Flatiron School, we know the founders of those probably. And then and then Bloom Tech, which used to be called Lambda School, being the most recent cool version of that. Many iterations of cool coding companies. And that's actually a long history as well of VCs overfunding industry, the same way they've overfunded like sneakers companies because VCs for some reason love sneakers. So it's like the industry is funded beyond the point of the market size, for example.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with competition. Like, even if you think of like Uber is actually a great example of this. Like, they actually have a very amazing business model. They don't have any drivers. They take, I think their take rate, is it 30% or is it 20%?
It must be around 30. And I don't know what the margin is.
30%. So they have to build a tech, which is like any tech company has to do that. And then they have to acquire the drivers and the riders. And so there's some marketing costs there. But essentially, like, this is kind of like the dream business. But I think what happened and how we kind of got into like raising so much fucking money for every single company. This is the same reason. I'll go back, and if anybody hasn't listened to like my dissection of my last company, Shyp, please do. It was just raise as much money as you possibly can. And I think that came from like the winner take all mentality that like was built into founders, but also by VCs as well, that you have to get like, well, ideally first to market, and then you need to dominate all the markets.
First to scale.
Like, yeah, and you need to get to massive scale, and then everything works. But if you were to take a look at like Uber without the competition, so imagine they didn't have Lyft, imagine they didn't have all of the international competitors, they could have actually had an extremely like high cash flow business like really early on.
It really reminds me of, this is also the era Peter Thiel was becoming famous. This is just like when you think societally in our industry about what it is that causes certain phenomena. 0% interest rate, Uber and Lyft competing. Peter Thiel is coming out with 0 to 1 Stanford classes and then later a book.
Yeah, great point.
It literally says, and he was probably today one of the most high profile people in the industry, first investor on Facebook. And he says, competition is for losers. Create monopolies if you can. And so WeWork, Uber, and a number of others are deliberately trying to squeeze out competitors so that they can effectively make sure they don't compete away all of their margin.
The way that they, and also I can't remember who coined the phrase, but it was like capital as a weapon, because innately in both WeWork and Uber's case, they don't have the network effects that like a Google had or like a Windows 95 had, right? They don't have that distribution advantage that just sinks in. And so it's really about spending and getting everywhere to then price out your competitors and just
like Bill Gates was like, by the way, that quote of capital as weapon, I think it's actually from a very legit person like Keith Rabois or Bill Gurley or something. But it's like even Bill Gates back in the day and others were notoriously just like, I will kill everyone else in this space. I will destroy them, and built a culture like that. And the rewards were reaped as a result.
But I think things have definitely changed. I think that the playing field is definitely more level. Like if you think of like, so Windows 95 is a great example, or Windows in general, right? Like think of the advantage they had bundling all of their software, including Internet Explorer, which then turned into Google, and searching like was actually one of the most profitable businesses ever. Like that is like that the monopoly effects you have there. Like it seems that like then that will equate to every other tech company ever. It did not work the same way in Uber. This is why, this is why Uber had to raise so much money. They overpaid to acquire drivers. They incentivized riders so much. They wanted to be the leader, not because they had the monopolistic, like just distribution advantage that like Windows or anybody else had prior, or actually Apple's another great example. Their App Store is also the same sort of thing. They had to overspend. And I think that has kind of created, and also I'll speak from an example, like I followed Uber and same with you, Julian, as far as like WeWork and like both of our businesses did not have the network effects or like the monopolistic effects that like our predecessors had. And so I think that's done a disservice to founders and also entrepreneurs that have thought that. And so my thought now is, and this is going back to the original part about like controlling, like build the best product, control your own distribution channels as much as you can. Like that, I think is like the most healthy way to build a really big business.
I think Andy is going to say something smart here.
But I'll take the other side of this equation every day of the week in this specific Uber example. I mean, maybe I don't know anything about Uber and I didn't work there. I have a lot of friends who did, and I've never asked this question. But realistically, what they did, they knew they had to create the network effect. They knew they had to have supply everywhere. They knew capital was the only way they were going to do that, by subsidizing the drivers. So when I land in a new city, I have a car available.
Yeah.
And they basically inherently did create a monopoly.
But what's impressive, I think,
Uber is not a monopoly at all.
$90 billion market cap company versus a $3 billion market cap in Lyft. So outside of the specific regions they gave up, China, and I think there's some competition in Latin America and Russia, they are a monopoly. They won. Lyft is basically only in the US. And so Travis's grand plan worked at the end of the day. He has a $90 billion, they have a $90 billion market cap. I think they've gotten close to profitability, although don't quote me on that.
No,
Lyft, I thought they just did, but I could be wrong. And at least on an EBITDA basis. And Lyft is now a $3.9 billion market cap company that no one really knows what to do with.
By the way, it reminds me that we should one day on this show talk about cloud kitchens, which I think is the most fascinating.
Yeah, we should.
Now, where Uber got it incredibly right was they got into food delivery. So they became, and your cloud kitchens, I had to chime in there. Uber got into food delivery and Lyft did not. And that's probably the reason why they are so successful.
So I'm going to take the opposite. I'm going to take the opposite of, well, I think that I'm going to take the Joe perspective, because he hired Emil Michaels and he's been very vocal on Twitter about how much bigger Uber probably could have been if they were more aggressive. And this really shows that it's not it doesn't have monopolistic built into the business model as far as their distribution, but it does have a pure execution focus, right? Like Emil Michaels, he says publicly, like if they did this in Uber Eats, or they did this or whatever, and replacing Travis with a new CEO is a mistake. But it's all an execution game. It was all like, who could do this faster?
Yeah.
And then ultimately like kill all the competitors. Like
I will say that time, and you and I, Kevin, were part of it.
Yes.
It was really about, okay, we'll take this and put it into mobile and see what happens. And doing it with an Uber having done it, produced, I knew the guy, he was an advisor of mine who ran Uber New York, which was the biggest city for Uber and till China or something. And he was like, it's the best product market fit in a decade. He's like,
yep,
we're just growing and growing and growing, and it's endless. And that plus zero interest rate. So it's like most businesses, it really paints a picture sometimes of like, I was just speaking to an investor a moment ago from a legit SMB venture fund in Silicon Valley. And he was talking about how in an SMB, you can't really deploy capital in that way because it doesn't have the economics of consumer. You can't force adoption rates, for example, online credit cards, something, and you can't hire a bunch of salespeople. There's certain industries where capital can be exerted in that way, and in others where it has to be straight up grit. Travis did both. He wasn't perfect for sure. He made a lot of mistakes, but he did deploy capital, and he did deploy incredible operational excellence for many years running. And I think lots of people look up to him.
So we only have we're going to end this episode short here. So what are your guys' takeaways from like businesses like this? Like, I know we all, and we hope to serve all the first time founders. That's like a reason for existing. Like, is it to build on platforms? Is it to build, you're just going to be faster than the other person, which I definitely would say is like Uber's, even though they had like local network effects, they didn't have global network effects. I think Airbnb is one of the best businesses of all time, and also eBay, just due to their natural global network effects they have. What should like a first time founder take out of this when they're like looking to build their next business?
Andy will say something smart here again.
I'll say speed to market. I think speed to market is the faster you get in front of users, the faster you learn what they want, the faster you can iterate, the faster you can incorporate research, and the faster you can find product market fit is probably one of the only things that matters. Platform risk is real. Platform risk matters when you're choosing to build on a platform. Platform risk has come into play in Facebook. It's come into play on other platforms, but Apple has been notoriously nice because their goal is to just tax the platform. So I think the lesson learned on platforms in general is if there is a tax, they will let you play. If there is not a tax and they are free, you probably won't be able to play the way you want to. And then I think you just have to size a market just like anything else. And I think the whole conversation about Apple Vision Glass, it comes down to, is this going to be a big enough market for me to be successful, and when? And timing is everything in these businesses. I mean,
it is.
And that's what it comes down to. So,
well, look at Magic Leap, right? Like, I think that like the world was just not ready for, I've never tried the product and I assume that it was awesome, but like timing, you're right. Timing is everything. Compared to now, Apple is building like basically a replication of what Magic Leap did. It looks a lot, well, I don't know. It doesn't look, the new Apple Vision doesn't look that cool, to be clear.
I would say,
initial version.
As an operator, in closing, because as you know, I have to go, but
yeah,
that one of the nice things about tech, and one of the things I always respect, and other than the fact that you end up working with a lot of smart people and talking to them all day, such as yourselves, the other thing is there's always another wave coming. And that actually like gives me comfort. Not as an operator in this business. There's not going to be major changes for us, and it's certainly not Apple Vision or whatever Pro is going to be one of them. But the point is like, there's another wave and there's another chance. You're not playing zero-sum games in the same way.
Right.
And the fact that you're not means that there are opportunities all around us. And that's something I find very compelling. Smart, as Frank Schlutman, I think, said in Amp It Up, he said, capital plus talent, an amazing combination.
Yeah, I mean, look at Satya. Look at Satya at Microsoft. I mean, who would have thought Microsoft is going to be the company that wins the AI war? But
to be clear, it's just starting. It's just starting. They have not won yet. But
you would have written them off
position.
3 years ago.
They're in a great position.
You would ask
right
what
now.
Their AI strategy is and what Microsoft research even does.
All right, we got to end this. We all have real jobs. I think that the takeaway, I like Julian's wrap up as far as always a new wave coming. Hopefully we don't get waves that don't produce anything or are Ponzi schemes anymore. And that they create net benefits for everybody. Thanks everybody for listening, subscribing, all of that. And hopefully we won't miss another week again. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you later.
Bye-bye.